Today we're gonna make a scratch version of green bean casserole using real ingredients, no canned stuff. And after doing some research, I found out that green bean casserole, or G.B.C. as we're gonna call it, is pretty much just about as American as it gets. So a little history lesson for you. After doing some digging, I learned that the dish was created in the 1950s in the Campbell's Soup test kitchen by a woman named Dorcas Riley. Yes, Dorcas is her first name. Firstborn, Dorcas Witt. And yes, this creamy green bean dish that we know and love was actually created using convenience food of the era, like canned green beans, French's onions, and Campbell's cream of mushroom soup. And now I understand that it sounds pretty cocky to say that I've created something better than the OG dish, but you know, I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't have something truly special to share with y'all. Okay, so let's start by making the crunchy topping first. To do so, we're gonna need a nice hearty loaf of white bread. 4 or 5 medium slices should do the trick. We're going to make butter-laced breadcrumbs by blitzing everything in a processor, and you can totally do this by hand. It'll just take a bit longer if you decide to go down that road. Tear le bread into quarters, then in with 2 tablespoons of room temperature unsalted butter. Hit the top with a bit of salt and fresh cracked black pepper, then give it all a whirl until the breadcrumbs sort of look like a coarse sand. A few pulses should do the trick. Hold the breadcrumb mixture in a container and set it aside for later. Now we are going to make some fried onions. 1 onion, we are going to julienne. To julienne an onion, top and tail the thing, peel the skin, then cut it in half like so. When julienning, do your best to follow the natural curve of the onion to ensure even slices. Come in at an angle, then slowly correct your knife upright as you work up to the center of the onion half. Slice and dice the entire onion, then we need to soak it in some buttermilk. This step is going to defuse some of the strong smelling compounds in the onion and will also help our flour stick on. Oh, and don't forget to season. If you don't have buttermilk, just use a bit of whole milk with a splash of lemon juice or vinegar. Add a few inches of neutral oil to a large pot or Dutch oven and set it over medium-high heat. We're going to fry around 375 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Dump a few cups of all-purpose flour in a large bowl and season with salt. That's going to be our basic dredge. So this is our fry station. We have our buttermilk-soaked onion slices, seasoned flour, and a rack or some paper towels to drain the fried onions. Coat the onions in the buttermilk, let some of the liquid drip off, then dust them in some of the flour. I like to use something like this spider or a slotted spoon to knock off excess flour from the onions before setting them in the oil. Gently lay the onions in some of the oil, then move them around a bit or else, they're going to stick together. You don't want that. You're going to want to fry in batches so that the oil stays between 375 and 400 Fahrenheit, or you could have soggy onions. It should take no more than 4 or 5 minutes for those raw boys to turn into crispy men. With the onions fried, it's as simple as mixing them into the breadcrumbs. I like to set the onions on top of the crumbs to dry out a bit more while I work on the rest of the dish. Okay, green bean time, the GB to our G.B.C. You can buy green beans trimmed or stem on like these guys. If you're working with green beans with the stem on, simply snap them off like so. Don't worry about the other pointed end of the green bean, those can stay where they are. Once you've removed all the green bean stems, cut them in half. I like my green beans in 2 to 3 inch pieces for this because, any bigger, they're sort of annoying to eat, and any smaller, they tend to fall apart. Now we need to blanch the green beans, which is going to do 3 things. It's going to make them tender, it's going to season them from the inside, and it's going to lock in that gorgeous green color. To do so, bring a large pot of water to a ripping boil, season it generously with salt, then add the beans in medium-sized batches. The goal is to fit as many green beans as you can while keeping the water at a boil, but also don't take this as a challenge, just do them in batches. Blanch the beans in the hot water for 3 minutes, then transfer them to an ice bath to shock. Shocking the beans is going to stop the cooking and keep the color of the bean vibrant green. We want tender, snappy, and healthy beans. Skipping the shock could make the green beans mushy and sort of brownish green, no bueno. So, okay, I like to use 2 mushrooms for this. Here we got our classic baby bellas. I just like the meatiness and sort of the body that they bring to the casserole. Wow, this one's actually more like a papa bella than a baby. But then here we got some shiitakes. You know them, you love them. I like these for their texture that they bring, sort of that almost like bouncy mouthfeel, and their flavor. But before we harness these mushrooms' umami power, we need to clean them. First, remove the stem of the boomer like so. The stem can just be a little chewy, but once it's cleaned, it can actually be used to bolster stock or dehydrate for later use. So, don't waste it, set it aside. Once all the shrooms are de-stemmed, use a damp paper towel to lightly rub away any surface dirt, then break the baby bellas into quarters with your hands. And you can do this with a knife, but I find it easier and more fun when done by hand. For the shiitakes, you're going to want to use a knife. Just cut the shiitakes into half-inch strips like so. And don't worry, these mushrooms are 90% water, so they're going to cook down and shrink tremendously. Okay, so the bulk of the work is complete. Now it's time to put it all together. I do want to talk about one ingredient here. This is what's going to set our casserole aside and make it super special. This is porcini powder. So my buddy, a mushroom expert, Dr. Gordon, he's out in Napa Valley, California. He foraged fresh porcini, dehydrated them down, turned them into a powder, and sent these my way. I understand you probably don't have a mushroom doctor just sending you sketchy bags of shrooms in the mail, but yeah, no, they actually sell mushroom powder at a lot of grocery stores these days. I've seen it at Whole Foods. I know Trader Joe's has one. I wouldn't be surprised if like a Ralph's jeweler or like an Aldi has, carries mushroom powder now. So this is optional. You don't need it. Don't not make the casserole because you don't have mushroom powder, but if you do have it, if you could pick some up, I highly recommend it because it's gonna lend like a blast of umami and mushroomy, creamy goodness to our casserole. This stuff is insanely powerful and definitely one of my favorite ingredients. Okay, so place a large pot or Dutch oven over medium-high heat, then pop in 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. Swirl that around until it melts, then in with all of the mushrooms, 4 cloves of minced garlic, and salt and pepper to taste. Move that around and cook the mushrooms down until they give up nearly all of their moisture. At first, the mushrooms are going to look dry, but as they cook, liquid will release, and this is going to take anywhere between 8 to 10 minutes, so be patient. Once the shrooms look wilted, in with 4 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of the mushroom powder. Mix that all around, let it cook a minute, then in with 1.5 cups of good chicken stock and 1.5 cups of heavy cream. Oh, and don't forget to season. Now, let the mixture reduce by about a cup. It's going to take roughly 10 to 12 minutes. Once you're looking good and thick, in with the blanched green beans, cut the heat, then stir everything around until the beans are coated with the creamy shroom mix. Here I have a 9x13 casserole dish, but feel free to use something a little more festive if you'd like. Pour the entire mixture in the dish, and we're going to bake this for 10 minutes at 425 Fahrenheit before removing it and sprinkling on the fried onion topping. After 10 minutes in the oven, the casserole should look glossy and practically begging for it. Dust on the crunchy topping and finish the casserole in the oven for 10 to 15 minutes more. You'll know when it's finished once the top is golden brown and the sauce bubbles up. There she blows. The top should be golden and crunchy from the breadcrumbs and crisp from the fried onions, then under the hood a luxurious umami-rich green bean mushroom mixture. Yeah. And I mean, if you don't get some sort of like family cooking accolade for this one, something's definitely wrong. At the very least, maybe you'll get out of dishes. Super rich in umami, the crunchy onions, the different kinds of mushrooms. The green beans still have some crunch and texture. They're not just like wilted down. G.B.C is magical. To me, G.B.C embodies true Thanksgiving food. You know, it's rich, it's creamy, it's hearty, it's soul-warming, it's solid nap fuel. It's insanely delicious served warm on the Thanksgiving table, or, you know, a few hours and a few drinks down the road, cold out of the fridge. Over the years, this one's kind of turned into a personal favorite of mine. And I invite you to make this for your friends and family this holiday season. It doesn't have to be Thanksgiving, you know, it actually works pretty much any wintry holiday I'd make this one. So thank you a ton for whipping it up with me, and I will see you gorgies next week.